First, we start with a point. A point is completely dimensionless and is merely an idea used to determine position in a system. In order to get the first dimension, we will need another point. And between these 2 points, we can draw a line. Now we have an object that has length. We start with our one-dimensional line, and we draw a second line through it. Now we have an object that is in the second dimension, as it has both length and width. However, for our purposes, it'll be much easier to just describe this as one line that branches into 2 pieces. Now imagine the Flatlanders, a race of people who only exist in the second dimension. Trying to perceive our 3-dimensional world would be very strange for them, as they could only perceive 3-dimensional objects in 2-dimensional cross-sections. For example, a ball crossing across their field of view would first appear as a tiny dot, then grow inexplicably larger until it became a circle, go back to being a tiny dot, and then blink out of existence altogether. The third dimension is easiest because we ourselves live in the third dimension. A 3-dimensional object has length, width, and depth. But there's another way we can picture the third dimension. Imagine again our race of Flatlanders, and this time they are lying flat on a piece of newspaper, depicted by this straight line because Microsoft Paint is not good for editing. It is a newspaper, trust me. Now imagine someone came by and rolled the newspaper into a cylinder. Now the newspaper takes up 3 dimensions, but the Flatlanders don't realize that, being only 2-dimensional creatures. Now one of the Flatlanders only has to move a little bit, and when we unroll the newspaper, they will be on the complete opposite side of the paper. To the Flatlanders, it would appear as though one of them simply teleported to the other side. In other words, you can jump instantaneously in one dimension by simply being folded through the dimension above. This is where things get interesting. To get started, first we need to imagine that a 3-dimensional object would make up only one point in a 4-dimensional space. Now let's say this 3-dimensional object is you. Like earlier, in order to get in the 4th dimension, we need another point. This can be represented by older you, shown here to be larger because most people grow as they age. Now we can connect them with a line, and voila, we are in the 4th dimension. The 4th dimension is a dimension of duration, and just like the Flatlanders, we can only see our 4-dimensional selves in 3-dimensional cross-sections. This means that if you were to truly see your 4-dimensional self, you would appear to be a long snake, made up of all the different ways you look like in your life, starting with your birth and ending with your death. Now to us, our lives may seem to be a straight 4-dimensional line representing all the different ways we were, but in reality, this 4-dimensional line was impacted by all the decisions you made or could have made during your lifetime. Say, in one lifetime, you grew up and married your college girlfriend and lived a very happy, average life. Now, just like the 2nd dimension is a branch off the 1st dimension, the 5th dimension can be considered a branch off of the 4th dimension. So say you made a different decision in your life. Say, instead of marrying your college girlfriend, you broke up with her instead. Your life took a turn for the worse after that, and now you live in this box. But say you made a different decision, broke up with your college girlfriend, moved to another area, and found another girl who is fabulously wealthy and beautiful, and now you are filthy, stinking rich. Now all of these branches in your lifetime are branches in the 5th dimension. Now, we have a problem. Say you're looking at your 5-dimensional self, which means you're looking at all the different ways you could have lived your life, and in none of those lifetimes are you Batman. And you really want to be Batman, because who doesn't want to be Batman? But no matter what route you take in your lifetime, you will never be Batman, because you are simply not Bruce Wayne. Now, there are 2 ways you could go about doing this. In one way, you can go back in time to when you were a little child, murder your parents, give yourself billions of dollars, and hope things turn out for the best. However, this is very brutal, and probably not what you want to do. Now remember earlier when we talked about how you can jump between points in the 2nd dimension by being folded through the dimension above it, the 3rd. Well, the same principle can apply here. We can jump through positions in the 5th dimension by using the 6th dimension. So the best way to become Batman would be to find the timeline of Batman and use the 6th dimension to fold yourself over into it and become Bruce Wayne. In other words, if you want to be able to imagine the 5th dimension as all the different ways you could have lived your life, then you can imagine the 6th dimension as all the different ways you could have lived your life and all the different possible beginnings your life could have had.